All right, welcome to the Ultra High Net Worth Clients Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Broadhead. We started this podcast as a way to create a central resource of the best financial advisor practice growing tips shared by the most outstanding members in the industry, of which our guest today is definitely one. These outstanding financial advisors and referral coaches agree to be on the show and provide a ton of value for free, all in the hopes that our audience might learn from their words. My father was a financial advisor, and financial advisors are the main clients we serve in an effort to help the world become more financially secure. Today, we have the rare pleasure of talking with an incredible advisor to financial advisors, Bill Cates. Bill, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. In case they misheard you, Chris, it's Bill Cates with a C, not Gates with a G.
Yeah.
The joke I like to make is Bill Gates may have a lot of money, but I'm going to help you make more money by serving more clients, finding more ideal clients. So I've been coaching and training and working with advisors for over 30 years, helping them acquire more clients through what overarching umbrella, I call it relationship marketing, meaning referrals, personal introductions, centers of influence, events, anything where the warmest way to reach people through the relationships. I know about other types of marketing for sure, but I always try to focus on the path of least resistance, the warmest ways. And I've got a new book out called The Language of Referrals. And it's just a very tactical, practical look at how to become more referable and how to be appropriately proactive. So thank you.
Nice, nice. And we'll definitely link to your book in the show notes. So, 30 years of helping advisors grow their practices. How did you decide on advisors as the folks you were going to help grow their practices, and were there any other options before advisors?
Yeah, they were actually a little bit. Before I got into this business, I owned a couple of book publishing companies and I sold those companies and I was looking for the next thing to do. And a friend of mine said, you should be a business consultant, a speaker, coach, because you've learned so much, you have a lot to share. And I said, okay. And I kind of looked into that world. And I first started working with printing companies because I knew that world. I bought a lot of printing, I brokered printing. And I quickly learned that while it was good, it was somewhat lucrative. Printers have very low, very narrow margins in terms of profitability. And I wasn't passionate about the work with them. And so what happens, I wrote a book in 95, came out in 1996 called Unlimited Referrals. That was my first foray into referrals. And pretty quickly, the financial services industry latched on. That's an industry that understands the referral process, appreciates the referrals and introductions. And so it didn't take very long for me to start focusing there. And I spoke at virtually every conference one could speak at, including MDRT main stage and around the world and different main stages. And what interesting thing happened, Chris, when, COVID hit and everybody was scrambling to figure out what's going to happen. I almost violated my own rules and my own teaching, and I started to look outside my target market. I started to think, well, maybe I need to expand my market a little bit because who knows what's going to happen with this thing, right? And then I got to, knock myself upside the head and said, no, no, no. Where are you at your best? Where do you bring the most value? Who needs your help? Yada, yada. And I doubled down with financial services. And that's when I started my podcast. That's when I started writing my latest book, The Language of Referrals, which is devoted to financial advisors. So I'd been, let's say, 90% with financial until COVID hit. And after that, it's been 100% nonstop.
Mhm. Awesome, awesome. So, how did you discover that advisors you had a lot of value to offer them, and how did you figure out that niching down to one specific market
Yeah.
was the move?
Well, I always knew about the power of a target market because in my book publishing companies, I also had some very specific target markets. And so I always knew that that was a powerful thing to do. I knew that when you have a clear, well-defined target market, how you communicate your value is going to be better. It's going to be more relevant to whomever you're reaching. A lot of advisors make this mistake. A lot of marketers make this mistake. They start to try to serve more people. They cast a wider net. They say, let's not leave these folks out and these folks out. And the problem is, as you widen the net, your message gets weaker. So I knew that early on. And so I was looking for the target market. Even as I was writing the book, I knew I wanted to latch onto the market. And really, one of the best ways to determine a market is how people respond to the message. And one thing you wanted, another kind of concept in marketing is you always want to try, if you possible, to be solving blatant critical problems. Blatant meaning your market knows they have the problem, and critical, it's a critical problem. It's not an aspirational issue that someday they'll get to it. It's something they really do need to solve. And I learned, of course, that client acquisition is a blatant critical problem for most financial professionals. Even the most successful will always take on an ideal client. They may not be hunting for a lot of people, but they'll take on someone that fits. A lot of the most successful advisors I work with actually have now junior advisors or associate advisors, and they're tired of being the rainmaker and they want these other folks to start to make some rain. And so that becomes a critical, blatant problem that I solve. So essentially, Chris, what happened is I saw that financial services, me talking about referrals, introductions, all the other things, how to communicate your value more in a more compelling way, was solving blatant critical problems. So that's how I knew it was a good market. And what happened also, as I became more successful, I was already pretty successful, having sold a couple of businesses actually. I had already experienced a lot of the work that good, capable financial advisors did for me. And so I appreciated their work. And over the last 30 years, I've come to appreciate it even more. And the way I think of it is good financial advisors take a leadership role in clients' lives. And what I mean by that is they help their clients make educated financial decisions that they probably wouldn't make without them, right? They're that outside force that comes in and breaks up the inertia and gets people moving in the right direction. And I know how important that is. And so it just became a perfect match of what I teach, what I care about, and then the people that I like serving, and hence 30 years of serving financial advisors.
Mhm. That's amazing. So did you discover them or did they discover you?
Yeah, that's a good question. A little bit of both. I guess mostly I discovered them. What happened is when my book first came out, I had a colleague who said, my husband is a financial advisor. You should go talk to their firm. And I said, okay, that's great. And I actually did it for free because I just wanted to talk about the topic, and I thought I'd get maybe some referrals or some testimonials. And so after the event, it really resonated. They really liked it. And one of the guys came up and said, "Oh, you should speak at $1 Million Roundtable." And I go, "Okay, great. What's that?" I was just learning the world of financial advisors from that standpoint. And so what happened is I first got involved in some of the local associations. At the time, they were called NALU, National Association of Life Underwriters. Now they're NAFA. And then I discovered MDRT. I discovered some of the others, and um, I did some talks, and I recorded them on audio. This was long before most people were using video, and so I'd sprinkle the book and the audio to folks, and I'd say, "Here's a book. Here's me in action." And invariably, I would call them, and later they say, "Well, Bill, we haven't had a chance to read your book. We will, but we listened to your audio tape. Really good. We got a meeting. We'd love to bring you in." So that's really how I started to build a reputation in financial services, is using my book as an entree point. A lot of advisors these days are doing their own books, which I generally encourage as long as they do it in the right way. And as I know you help advisors with podcasting, that's another, to me, financial advisors are experts, right? They have expertise in a certain area. And to me, experts speak, experts write. And whether that's in person, whether that's podcasting, whether that's a book, whether that's articles, those are the things that experts do. And so that's what I did, and that's how I built a reputation in a target market. And I also encourage advisors to do the same.
Awesome. And we no longer help anyone with podcasts.
Oh,
We do Facebook video ad campaigns and cold email campaigns. The
okay.
podcasts are too many points of failure, as I'm sure you're well aware.
Well, there are, and a lot of folks that are doing podcasts, they don't necessarily have, let's say, the natural ability or natural talent to do it. And I'm sure you did a lot of hand holding there. So anyway,
Yeah, most of our clients were natural on mic.
good,
They
good,
just they didn't, they don't understand any of the other required technology, and there's just, no one really understands the amount of work that goes into a podcast besides other podcasters.
true, true.
So, yeah. So sticking to the direct, measurable, services for now. Awesome. So, you know, can you talk about how you work with financial advisors? Is it a consulting basis? Do you come in? Yeah, give us a little insight.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It varies a little bit. We always try to match the service to the client to make sure it makes sense. So, for instance, we have an online academy called the Cates Academy for Relationship Marketing. And a lot of the folks that I work with, we use that as the basis where people will watch the videos, the short lessons. Then I'll get on the phone or Zoom, usually Zoom these days, and we coach through. It makes a very efficient learning process. With that said, I do have occasionally coaching clients who don't want to watch the videos. They just know they won't watch the videos. So sometimes we give it to them all in audio because we know they'll listen to that. Or sometimes we just do the Zoom and we instruct and coach at the same time. So it varies. Sometimes it's one-on-one with one individual. Sometimes it's a small firm of several folks. Usually I encourage the advisor to get other team members engaged, even if they're not directly going to be doing some of the things we teach, they'll have an influence. So, for instance, um, with my latest book, The Language of Referrals, if you buy the book, you also get access to what we call the Language of Referrals toolkit. The reason I bring that up is one of the items in the toolkit is how to create a culture within your firm, how to get your team members engaged in the referral process. Probably short of asking, right? You're not gonna have usually a client service person ask for introductions. It doesn't happen very often, but they help the firm become more referable through how they interact with clients. It's also important for your team to know what you're trying to do, especially in my case where we're asking folks sometimes to step out of their comfort zone a little bit to do something that they weren't, heretofore wasn't a habit, and so may not be completely 100% comfortable. Having other people in your firm know what you're trying to accomplish and support you, and maybe a little bit of accountability if you need that along the way. So I'll work with individuals, I work with teams, with large organizations, sometimes just the video. Some people don't even want me. They just want to watch the videos. So we just make it match the person and whatever they're trying to accomplish. The main things we work on are, obviously, I've mentioned referrals and introductions. The other thing, I have a book called Radical Relevance that came out right before COVID hit. It was not great timing. And it's all about how advisors talk about their value, talk about what makes them different, talk about the compelling reasons to work with them, how they do it, why they do it, all that, targeting niche markets. So a lot of the work I do with advisors is also their messaging, how they think about and talk about their value, how they communicate that to clients, to prospects, to centers of influence, which impacts all aspects of their marketing, right? Not just the referral process, whether they're using LinkedIn, Facebook, blogging, whatever it is they're doing to put the message out there, how they communicate that value makes a huge difference.
Awesome. And how do you get on these financial advisors radar?
Yeah. So, I mean, shows like this doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah.
Podcasting. I've been in the business for so long that I have a pretty good reputation. I'm saying that with humility. I really mean that. Uh, it's pretty often that, I speak at a group or I talk to someone and say, yeah, I've been following you for years. And I go, well, that's nice. I appreciate that, and so speaking at all the main events over the years and having my weekly newsletter and having my podcast, our podcast is ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts worldwide. So I know I reach a lot of advisors with the
Nice.
podcast. And it's what I call, and I teach this to advisors, the same basic principles. I call it reputation marketing. I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, right? Having a target market. So what we know is referrals, seeking referrals, et cetera. It's a form of prospecting. I think it's a high form of prospecting, meeting people through other people. And yet it is kind of an outward stroke, right? I don't want to say push because it's not something we push on the people, but it is a proactivity um, type of thing. When you create a reputation within a target market, that becomes a more magnetic thing. Now you're starting to draw people to you because you have a reputation and you're known for something. It starts to draw people to you. I think the prospecting never fully goes away. It's always an element. Yet when you create a reputation within a target market, everything else does get easier. It's easier to get referrals and introductions. It's easier to have people contacting you rather than you trying to contact them first. You bring more value, all the things that happen. So it's creating a reputation within an industry. I've done that to us. Now it's a big industry. So I know that not everybody knows me in this industry and people are coming and going all the time. Yet that's a big part of what I've done. And it takes time to do that. You don't do that in 2 or 3 years. It takes, a decade or more to do that.
Mhm. Mm. Awesome. So when you're working with the financial advisor, we discussed the power of niches and focusing on a specific audience.
Mhm.
If you do encourage them to niche down, focus on a niche, what's the best way for a financial advisor to find their niche?
Yeah. So quite often they're already sitting on it in their client base. And you really only need 1 or 2 clients in a potential niche to get started. But most advisors have been at it for a while. If they look at their book of business, they got little clumps, right? They got, oh, everybody here works in this company, or everybody here is part of this industry, or this is an extended family. So they got these clumps. So sometimes that's a very natural place to look. Um, and sometimes it has to do with where they worked before, right? If they came out of another industry, then a lot of advisors will, turn back to that industry and try to serve those folks. That's another way to do it. I'll give you some criteria for a good target market. And by the way, for newer really for any advisors, I don't recommend putting all your eggs in one basket until you know it's a good basket. There's still other things you could be doing to bring in clients. Keep doing those things, but then start to experiment a little bit. And it's kind of like I did with financial services. And once I realized that it was a marriage made in heaven, then I put everything in it, right? Lock, stock, and barrel. So um, you want to make sure the target market's large enough to make sense to build a career on, or at least part of your career. Um, if it's not large enough, then it really doesn't make sense to make it a full target market. They need to have the financial capacity for what you're doing, meaning they have to be made up of the types of people, in this case, with the money, the income, the assets, et cetera, to do the kind of work you want to do, whether you're serving middle America or where blue collar wealthy or high level executives. It almost doesn't matter. They've got to have the wherewithal to take advantage of the work that you do. One of the big elements of a good target market is that there are formal and informal ways of communication. I once heard it described the target market as where do the people congregate? Now, these days, it could be virtually, not just in person. Um, but if you have a market where they talk to each other through meetings, at the water cooler at a business, then that's where you start to be able to take advantage of that building a reputation because they talk to each other, and that is facilitated. Which is, by the way, we're having a lot of folks not want to go back to work; they want to keep working from home. Uh, and while that's still a smaller segment of our workforce, I think that impacts or could impact the ability of an advisor to target a company, which is a very common market, right? I've interviewed guys who target Google, Harley Davidson, Procter and Gamble, to name three that I can think of off the top of my head of folks that I've interviewed have done very well in those arenas. Uh, but those employees worked together and they got to know each other over time and they felt comfortable introducing their advisor to their colleague. If we keep going the direction of people not going into the office, that might be not quite as productive, I suppose. Typical target markets for advisors: employees in large companies, business owners in a certain industry, university administration and faculty, certainly medical practices of different types. Uh, and then there's some kinds of affinity groups that can make also good target markets, like athletes. It's not a traditional target market, but that's some people have done very well with athletes. Um, Families that have children with special needs. That's also a very nice target market for a lot of folks. They don't have an association per se, but they have schools and the parents get to know each other at the schools. And if you have an area of expertise and a target market and you put those two things together, then it's a very powerful combination.
Mhm. So it's almost as if the target market, the niche market, they are exceptionally referable to each other as well. That's like baked into the strategy.
Yeah, they know people like themselves. And when they see that you are focusing on folks like themselves, and let's take like employees in a large company, because another one of my clients I forgot about, the Dennis is with Verizon employees. So it's all over the map in terms of what's possible. And of course, what happens is you get to know their benefits package in a way that a generalist wouldn't know,
Mm,
and you see the strengths of that package, you see the holes, the gaps, and anytime Dennis was telling me his target is Verizon, anytime there's a change in the benefits package, it's a boon to him because it's another reason to be in touch with his clients, of course, but then they start talking about it amongst themselves in the workforce, and then he gets a lot of referrals because there was a change, which is
mm,
pretty typical in our industry. People usually
mhm,
come to us because of an event. Something's happened, some change in benefits, inheritance, having a child, just some life, money in motion event. And so when you target a market and something changes in that company in the benefits package, it's a boon to the advisors who focus on that target market. Another aspect, by the way, of a target market that can be very powerful are the other centers of influence who are also targeting that market. You'll find attorneys that might target a market, or accountants or other service providers, and you can often form relationships with those. I'll give you one example. Jason is an advisor in Canada, and his target market is dentists. And he was doing some networking and he ran into an accountant who was at the event, learned that this accounting firm, one of their verticals are dental practices. And in fact, this was before COVID, they had monthly dinners for their dental clients. And they loved Jason's message and how he focused on the needs of dentists. And he became their recurring speaker at these events. And man, that's marketing you just can't pay for, and he didn't have to pay for it, and he'd always find a new client every time he spoke at one of their events. And so that's one of the other benefits of focusing on a target market is you find other people also focusing on the target market, and you can join forces and collaborate and do things together.
yeah, I've heard that from a number of advisors. They say the biggest driver of new clients is just these incredible relationships they have with similar niche service providers.
Yes,
Is,
yes.
is there any specific strategies or recommendations you have for developing and growing these relationships with similar niche service providers? Or-
Yes, probably the most important thing is to be referable in their eyes. So with a client, you are delivering your service. You are
Huh.
delivering your service. They've experienced your value. Now, with a potential center of influence, an accountant, attorney, a business consultant, whomever that might be, hasn't actually experienced your value firsthand unless they're your client. So it takes time to educate these folks on the work you do and how your clients benefit and who you serve the best, and how to recognize those people. So it's a big educational process for each other to be able to work and serve that each other. One of the mistakes I've seen advisors make is they come on a little too strong sometimes with these potential partners, and they say, "Hey, you've got clients, I could serve them. I could be a great, resource for them." Well, okay, that's great, but most of those folks don't like people that come on too strong, and they're risk adverse, especially the accountants and attorneys. So
Yeah.
it's a
It's like
slower
dating, right?
process. Yeah, you're dating. You're absolutely right. You're dating, and they got to see your value, and then eventually, by the way, just because you send an accountant or an attorney, which are common partnerships, there's other types, but just use those. Just because you send them a couple of referrals that become clients for them doesn't automatically make you referable. It doesn't hurt, could help. They appreciate it, but they still may not fully understand the work you do and how you do it and who you do it for. And so you again have to educate those folks. That's probably the biggest thing in getting those relationships to work is to earn that trust and earn that ability. Because I'm not going to introduce you, Chris, to someone unless I'm pretty comfortable what you do and I know what you do. Right. It's still a little buyer beware. I may say, look, I don't know everything Chris does, but for everything I can tell, he's a solid guy, does good work. His clients love him. You have to make the final choice, right? So I may hedge a little, but that doesn't happen overnight. It's one thing to say, hey, check Chris out. I think he might be able to help you. Well, that's better than nothing. But if I say, look, I've seen how Chris works. I see how he helps his clients. It's a conversation you really should have. That's better, right? That's a much better introduction and endorsement. And it takes
Mhm.
time to build that.
To the point where they feel like you're doing the client a favor. You're like, I know the perfect person for that need.
Yeah, you wanna be the guy that knows the guys or the gals that knows the gals, right? I don't wanna make this, misogynistic by any stretch, but, it's like, I know a guy, you know the expression, right? So,
Yeah, I got a
I
guy.
I one advisor I was working with years ago said to me, he says, "Look, Bill, anything that you do that has to do with money, check with me. I'm not saying I'm the person that's gonna be able to help you with that, but I know people who may be the right person." And over the years working with Larry, when I needed to change my corporation and need from a C to an S and I needed to get evaluated, uh, he knew the person to send me to get the valuation done, et cetera. So I believe advisors need to present themselves as that resource, right? Yes, you get me, you get my expertise, you get my team's expertise. So you get a team of other people that have other areas of expertise. And I know a lot of other people in the community, financial and not, who can also be of service to you. So, consider me as a go-to resource when you're trying to accomplish really anything. And
Mhm,
when you position yourself that way, and you've done a good job networking and vetting the resources that you're going to send, you add a lot more value. This is particularly good with small business owners, right? Small business owners are always looking for good resources, vendors, suppliers, partners. And so when you approach small business owners and they see that you're well connected with a lot of other folks, that's a benefit. That's a value that they perceive.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you're we've so far only had financial advisors on the podcast. You're the first, financial advisor adjacent person we've had on the podcast.
Right.
Not and you definitely will not be the last. We're gonna have some really exciting business owners and and probably other centers of influence relevant to the financial advisor industry.
Right.
But I'm curious, you have a very unique perspective that most likely like a single financial advisor doesn't have over the last, even if they've worked over the last 30 years. In my eyes, this chat GPT, large language models, just all of these up and coming uh, finance startups, it seems like they wanna disrupt this industry so bad. They they wanna just decimate this industry. And from my perspective, it's like, okay, this AI, this tool may be an incredible stock picker and may make you the most amazing diversified portfolio of all time. But then it might do something really weird and you're like, "Why did you do that?" And you have no one to talk to. So what's your perspective on this, oncoming AI? I don't want to say apocalypse, but I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know exactly how it's gonna play out. I use AI on a regular basis, to stimulate my thinking, and
Mm.
when I'm writing a blog or I'm writing something and I get
It's
a
an
little
amazing
stuck.
tool.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a tremendous
unbelievable tool.
tool, and you gotta be careful with it, because it's not always accurate. They'll even say, the answers aren't always accurate, so vet your answers. That
Can get
that certainly
creative
can be,
sometimes with
yeah, it can be
with
creative.
facts.
I interviewed a gentleman, Jay Bear, for my podcast, and while this wasn't the main emphasis of, the interview, we did talk about AI a little bit. He says, "Well, right now," he says, "AI is, for me," he says, "is average information, but there will be a time when it's not. There will be a time when," and if you think about it, if you do a Google search, you get a bunch of choices to look at, and you have to kind of filter through to try to figure out. If you do something and you prompt it well in AI, you're gonna get an answer. Now, it may not be the right answer, but you're gonna get an answer, and people are gonna be tempted to use that, and they're gonna be influenced by that, and we're gonna have a much more, I use the term loosely, educated clientele coming to us. They may not be well educated, but they will know things, or at least they will believe they know things. So we have to be prepared for that. And what Jay said, and I'm trying to do this myself, we have to stay ahead of that. We have to stay ahead of what AI can do. And so what I'm seeing with AI and all, robo advisors and all the technology coming into play, it really screams the fact that the relationship is going to be the prime thing,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. Will there be some people that don't care about a relationship with an advisor and will just use the internet, the computer to figure out where they want to put their money and how they, yeah, there'll always be those people. But for most people, I remember when the internet came out, right? And they started to be able to sell life insurance on the internet and you could do trades on the internet. Everyone was thinking, oh God, they're not going to need advisors anymore. Well, nothing further from the truth from that, right? Because it confuses
Yeah.
those people, and they need guidance. They need wisdom. They need education specific to their situation. And yeah, the bots will get better, AI will get better, and will create more context. But at the end of the day, I think most people are still going to crave the relationship to help them sort through and think through and figure out what's best for them. So, from my perspective, and now I admit that I see things through the lens of relationship marketing, right? So, I'm a little biased in that regard, and I know that. And looking that way, I see where the relationship's going to become even more important to help people filter through all this stuff that they're going to be getting in other ways. I know my advisor must hate me sometimes because I'll listen to like a mutual fund wholesaler talk about one of his or her funds, or I'll listen to an annuity guy or gal talk about their thing, and I always go back and I go, so Aaron, what do you think about this fund, and what do you think about this? And he's going, oh no, here goes Cates again, with his ideas he's collecting. Well, guess what? That everybody's collecting that stuff now, right? Be it Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey and artificial intelligence, right? The information overload is there. So guess what? We need the human, the other wise human, to help us figure out what's right for us, right? Not what is a possible right answer, but what is the right answer for us. And so to me, in the long run, I don't think it's going to adversely affect our industry. It's just going to feel weird for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. And yeah, I mean, you've seen some incredible changes over the last 30 years. It's I mean, it's startling to think about like how much has changed in 30 years. And
It's true, but I'll tell you something. Here's what I've learned in marketing and just business in general. There are principles, there are strategies, and there are tactics. And principles rarely change. Principles of marketing, for instance, principles of relationship formation, those things don't change.
mm,
Now, the strategy might change a little bit depending on what's going on and what market you're pursuing and what's happening in the economy. So the strategy can change as the wind blows a little bit. And tactics, of course, can change a lot. The the challenge I found for small business owners, for advisors, really for anybody, is that when there is something not working as well as we'd like it to be it client acquisition or whatever, we often immediately go to the tactics. Oh, I need to generate more social media, or I need to post more on LinkedIn, or I need to do this, or send more emails, or buy a list, or ask for referrals more. And that may be true, but if you don't consider the larger strategy and the principle involved, you could be going down a path that really is not going to produce a result you want. So, yeah, things have changed over the years, but one thing that hasn't changed, you still need to be referable to get referrals. That'll always be the case. You still need to have very hyper relevant messaging if you expect to get anybody's attention. In fact, that's become even more important than it used to be. Is the relevant, hyper relevant messaging. My book's called Radical Relevance, so I can call it radically relevant messaging. And yeah, a lot has changed and a lot hasn't.
amen. Now, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about some, referral insights.
Mhm.
Are there any easy changes that maybe advisors are not aware of that can help them become more referable?
Yeah, so a few things. And well, first of all, everybody knows the concept of having a client service model, a client engagement model that you follow. Some folks have gotten rather lax with that and don't follow it very well. So, having a clear client engagement model that you follow on a regular basis with checklists, and so your clients can feel it. They can feel that you're on purpose in your relationships with them, whether it's a annual meeting or a quarterly meeting or something in between, and all the other things you may do. They've got to feel that you're on purpose in terms of how you're staying in touch with them. So that's one of the biggest things. Another thing in terms, especially referability, is there's two elements to become referable. There's the value connection and the personal connection. Now, the value connection consists of the questions you ask, the things you teach, the results you produce for them, your ongoing responsive service, all of that's part of the value connection. That's got to be there. But there's also the personal side, the personal connection, the likability, the trustability that needs to be there as well. And you can't exist without the other. You can't have good, satisfied clients unless you have both those connections. So part of your client engagement model needs to incorporate both. In other words, how are we going to stay in touch with our clients over the coming year in a way that brings value to them? All right, we got our monthly newsletter, we got our podcast, we've got our meetings, we've got educational events. And then also, how are we going to stay in touch with our clients in a way that build the personal connection and create and continue that trust and likability? That could be client appreciation events. It could be birthday calls, a typical thing that people think about, calling clients on their birthday. Older your clients, the more they're going to love a phone call on their birthday because they don't have as many people remembering your birthday as they used to. So, I mean, it sounds kind of silly. I went to an event. This event had about 100 advisors in it. I was speaking at the event, and um, all of them were doing $1 million or more in production, every one of them. And I'll tell you, probably 60% of the conversation, at least, was on client events, on thank you gifts, on client experience. It was all about client experience. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? What about the advice about the investments and insurance and all that, right? Of course, that's important. It's got to be good. It's got to be sound. But if you really want to grow and you want to grow through referrals and recommendations and introductions, you have to address that other side of things. Um, to me, what creates advocates for a business is what I'll call the business friendship, right? When you have a business friendship where the relationship goes beyond just the core work that you do, and there really is a true respect and likability and trustability going on there. And not all clients want that, but the ones who do, they love it and they become advocates. And advocates, um, not only will they recommend you strongly, but they'll make sure the connection goes through. They'll ask you, "Have you called my friend?" Or they'll ask a friend, "Have you talked to my advisor yet?" Advocates will truly advocate for you, and it's the business friendship that is the secret sauce to creating advocates.
Yeah, I love that. Just calling them on their birthday. It's so simple, but incredibly powerful. I mean, their kid. You might call them before their own kids do.
Well, you might very well do that. I mean, cards are nice too, handwritten cards. Uh, a lot of people use send out cards and all those other tools that are like that send these, machine generated cards. I used to use that a little, and I've kind of moved away from that because what's the point of a card? The point of a card is a personal connection. Now, how you making a personal connection with some machine generated card that you didn't even touch? Um, so I think you need to be careful about that.
Yeah.
It's the personal connection that will make you stand out, that will create someone to becoming an advocate for you.
Mhm. And I think, that reinforces our point on AI. It's like as we get more roboticized, it's like that personal touch is going to stand out and be even more powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. All right.
Hey,
Well, we have already gone well over the time, so I appreciate you staying
yeah,
on a little longer. Just just one or two more questions
sure.
if you're cool with that.
Yeah,
So I already know my last question. I'm gonna throw one more. I wrote down like 20 questions I want to ask. How do I decide? Yeah, how about this one? So, I often find our audience responds most powerfully to what not to do. Are you noticing any big mistakes that a lot of financial advisors are making right now that, you could easily change?
yeah. I'd probably one of the biggest mistakes I've seen is how people are using LinkedIn um, and other types of social media, but I'm thinking mostly LinkedIn. Um, Probably a day doesn't go by that I don't get some cold message from a financial advisor who doesn't know who I am. It's clearly been generated either by a bot or they've copied and pasted and they don't know who I am. And it's obvious they don't know who I am. And I, I block those. I report those to LinkedIn because,
Oh, wow.
yeah, because that's cold calling. Some people have described that what people are doing on LinkedIn as the new cold calling. So, what makes LinkedIn work, and the folks that I've seen who have great success with LinkedIn are when they target a market, number one. And so, therefore, everything they do within LinkedIn is totally relevant to the people they're reaching. And so, the people they're reaching can see, oh, this person gets me. This person understands me. So, the biggest word in marketing and sales that really anyone can endorse or embrace is empathy, which means understanding of and appreciation for the other person. And the problem is when we try to do these one to many marketing concepts, there's no empathy. There's no understanding of and appreciation of that person's situation. It's
Mm,
clearly robotic.
mhm,
And so I'd say that's the biggest mistake that people make. Um, one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is how they're trying to cast a huge net um, and not personalize the work that they're doing and meet people
mm,
in a personalized way. Because think about it for a second. You're trying to gain influence over someone's current and future financial lives. How do they want to meet you? How would they prefer to meet you? Well, probably through someone else they already trust. But short of that, and if they haven't, been introduced to you in some other way, they at least need to get a sense that you understand who they are and, you know, what world they're from and some of their challenges that are unique to them. And it's hard to do that when you spray and pray with your marketing.
yeah, absolutely. That we're huge proponents of video Facebook ads. They're literally videos of the client, talking about who they serve, why they serve them, how they serve them, stories of success, and that's that warms up the client before they've
Yes. Yes.
said a single word to.
And any kind of a story, example,
Yeah.
bringing to life what you do. And if you're using video, then you get the sense of the advisor too, and in that,
Hmm.
depending on if it's a
Yeah.
video of them. So yeah, anything that can warm it up and personalize it is going to stand a much better chance of success.
Yeah. Amen.
Right?
Awesome. All right. Well, just our final question, and then we will let you go.
Hmm.
Appreciate you staying a little
Yeah.
longer.
Sure.
The final question, it's open ended. Take it in any direction you want. What are you working towards?
Well, I'll tell you two things. First of all, my book, The Language of Referrals, I'm obviously trying to get that out and the word out on that. I am also writing another book, which I hope to be out in the fall. That's going to be around beliefs, mistaken beliefs, and unhelpful emotions around money. And it's going to be a parable book. So it's going to be a story. And it's going to take place in a bank robbery. And it's going to be these bank robbery hostages surrounded by money and the robbers around money. And then it's going to, a conversation around money will ensue. And so I think it's going to be a fun way to educate not so much financial advisors, but their clients and other
Yeah.
folks around the beliefs. And every human being, including financial advisors, have, pardon my French, crap around money, right? We all have stuff that doesn't serve us sometimes around money. So this book is designed to help that.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. What inspired the story uh
Yeah, I actually
track?
I had this on the back burner for a long time in my brain. The working title at the time, this is not going to be the title of the book, was you earn what you believe, and it was going to be about the beliefs that we as humans bring to the table that are often mistaken and limiting. And sometimes they're very helpful beliefs, but sometimes we have mistaken and limiting beliefs. And but what happened is I started to work on the book. I decided I needed to stay where I knew, which is money and financial advisors and that world. So then I decided to make the whole thing about beliefs focused just on money, not just every aspect of our life, relationships and other things. So it's slow. And then I found a co-author to help me with this. I'm kind of supplying the information, but my co-author is developing the characters and the storyline with a little bit
Cool.
of my help. We
Yeah.
interviewed a real hostage negotiator who helped us. How would a hostage negotiator, pursue this kind of situation? I
Mhm.
interviewed a gal who was actually held at gunpoint in a bank robbery uh, to get her perspective, and I've interviewed probably 30 people around their beliefs around money from that they got from their parents, and so it's going to be a very realistic book in a sense,
Mhm.
uh, but depicted in a fictional story. And it's a bank robbery, but we're taking the edge off. There's going to be some humor in it. Bank robbers are going to be a little inept. No one's gonna get hurt, but they're gonna get caught, and they're gonna pay their dues. for having broken the law. But anyway, you'll see that when it comes out next fall.
Yeah, that's awesome. I seem to absorb about 1,000 times as much information from a story as I do from just information
And you're
thrown
not
at me.
alone. You're not alone. It
Yeah,
pulls you in. You get the
yeah,
point without it being, yeah. So that's why we wanted to do it that way, because it's another way to get the information in.
yeah.
Um, so
That's great.
anyway,
That's awesome.
thanks.
I'll look forward to that. And where can our audience find out more about you, Bill?
Sure. Referralcoach.com. Referralcoach.com is my website. Start poking around there. Send me a message. Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. Not Bill Gates, Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. And I guess lastly, my book, languageofreferrals.com. Languageofreferrals.com. There's a little video, a little info, and you can pick it up if you want.
Awesome. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and my audience. This was awesome.
You bet,
I
Chris. Thank you.
super
Appreciate
enjoyed
it.
this. Yeah. And to all our listeners out there, thanks so much for tuning in and keep on growing out there, everybody. See ya.